Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to Pick Up the Truth. I hope everybody's sitting back from a good day, trying to relax, maybe toking on some good refreshment. Now, on the screen, you're going to see a photograph of two babies, a boy and a girl, and they're twins. And the reason why I have this up is because I'm a twin of a girl as well. So my sister, she lives up north in a different state than I do, but we have a strong bond together because we're twins. But we're not identical, so we're completely different. And that's what I found strange about it, Sometimes when I think about how different we are and the reasons why, it boggles my mind, because my twin sister has bright red hair and freckles, and she's light skin complected, and I know where she gets it, because she looks like my father and she looks like my grandmother on my father's side, and there's no mistaking it. She looks like Grandma used to when she was younger. And I find that strange, because I look exactly, similar, very, very similar to my mom's mom, my grandmother on my mom's side. So, and I look almost identical to a lot of my cousins on my mother's side, it's always been, I never really noticed it as a child playing with, children, my cousins on my mom's side and my cousins on my dad's side. We always got together and played, and got into as much trouble and had as much fun as we possibly could, just like everybody, I think. But yeah, it's awful strange how we look so much different, but our bond is unbreakable. We grew up together and experienced everything together as one, really. I mean, I remember we grew up on a farm, in Ohio, and it was a huge piece of land with tons of cornfields, and on the other side we had cow pastures with the electric fences. And I remember I used to tease the cows. Me and my sister, we used to tease the cows and try to get them to come up close to the fence, so it would shock them and they'd just jump back. It was cruel, but you get bored on the farm and you find funny things to do. I remember my father used to let me ride the riding lawnmower, and I guess that's how he got me to mow the grass. But I didn't really mow the grass. I just hauled ass around the big acres and acres of land. I used that lawnmower as a race car, I think. When you're 8 years old, you get the freedom of something that has wheels and a motor. You think you're in heaven. At least you feel like it. But I can remember growing up on a farm, we had a lot of fun, but we also led a very sheltered life because, we were isolated from a lot of people, And my dad, he turned out to be an abusive alcoholic, but, that's how they program a lot of people, to be assholes, addictive assholes. They always like to push alcohol on every one of us, trying to get us addicted to it in one way or another with the ads and affiliating it with the sports they get us to like. Just any way they can get us addicted to this alcohol that they sell and get us to cycle the money they enslave us with. It's like a win-win for them. They get us distracted with being an alcoholic, a lifelong addiction that makes you an abusive asshole towards your spouse and your children. They get you to ruin not only your life, but your family's life and whatever friends you had just for the alcohol. It's disgusting. My dad, he was a smart man. He was an engineer, very smart mathematically, and he just had a lot of potential. He made a lot of money. Even back then in the 70s, he came home with lots of money. Never had to worry about anything. But going through his addiction, I know it. I know now that I know truth, it wasn't his fault, because he was programmed like millions of other people are programmed to be addicted to these things so they can sell them to you, just like cigarettes. I was addicted to cigarettes for 40 plus years, and I quit because I was tired. I was tired of cycling the money they enslaved me with. And I was tired of being controlled to go by them, because they made me addicted to it with the chemicals. So I just got fed up, and I'm like, you're not controlling me anymore with this garbage. And really the only way to quit cigarettes is cold turkey, and stay away from the oral fixation of trying to substitute food for smoking. It'll just make you get overweight and make you feel miserable. So you just have to keep your hands out of your mouth, which shouldn't be a big deal, because they make everybody scared to put their hand to their mouth anyway with the COVID they program our minds to believe in. But, well, getting back to me and my sister, I kind of got off track there. Sorry, guys. Too many things to talk about. But my twin sister and I, we always had a close and loving childhood together. We did everything. We always had pictures of ourselves as babies, and the crib together, and I may have been pulling her hair or she was pulling mine, or one or the other. We always would give it to each other, and we could take it too. But we were competitive because my father, He wanted us to be sports oriented because that's the way he was programmed to believe. So I remember at an early age, probably around 6 years old, I remember being in a gymnasium at 6 o'clock in the morning for basketball practice. And I'm thinking, are you kidding me? And I don't know what the fuck happened, guys, but I think I went through one day of basketball practice and I probably said something like a smart ass would say. I just remember not going back to basketball practice after that. And ever since that day, my dad stuck me in baseball. So I went through, let's see, I played baseball probably from 6 years old to 12. And my sister did as well. I mean, I played hardball, little league hardball, with a littler ball so we could throw it faster and hit it harder and, like the big leagues do. Back then they played real baseball. We played real baseball. They had first base, second base, third base, and home plate, and they had a big outfield. It was almost, I think it was regular size, a ball field. But I was an all-star baseball player, and I was brainwashed to think I had to do well in sports, and I was always getting in the newspaper, batting 1,000. I was an all-star hitter. And my sister, she always felt like she had to compete with me, so she did well also, because she was talented. And she was always getting in the newspaper, the same as I was, batting 1,000, and other achievements as well. But I remember we were in, it was like the World Series championship, We had made it all through every opponent, and we beat them. And I remember, it was like a scenario of, we were gonna win the game, and there was 2 outs, and I remember thinking to myself, because I used to play in the left field, in the outfield, and I was thinking to myself, please don't hit it to me, please don't hit it to me. Because, at that age, I wasn't so good at catching the ball, but I was an awesome hitter. So I was thinking, please don't hit it to me, because it was the last out, I was like, we're almost done. And this kid, what's he do? He hits it right to me, folks. And I remember as the ball was slowly coming to me, it felt like an eternity, because he hit this ball so high and it was curving right to me. I had to move just a little bit, but not that much. And I remember seeing the ball come right into my glove, and all I was thinking about was how my dad taught me to hold the glove and what to do when the ball comes to you. So I was thinking about all that and trying to watch the ball coming into the glove at the same time. And I remember the ball hit the center of the glove and bounced up and came back into the glove. and that was the last out, and we won the game. And all I remember is the rest of the kids grabbing me and putting me on their shoulders and taking me to the dugout. That was an awesome time for me as a child. But you know, these things these memories that are stored in our head, or they can be good and they can be bad, because that was a good part of my childhood. And the bad part of my childhood was when my mother passed away. And I remember that night vividly. And I remember my mom put us to bed like she always did, and she kissed us good night. But for some reason, I remember she put me in bed and she got distracted, and I didn't give her a kiss goodnight, and that night she passed away. And we didn't find out until the morning. It was hard. I thought for years it was my fault. I never experienced death. Never knew anybody that died. And all of a sudden, your mom's gone. Your whole world changes. I remember that they couldn't figure out what happened to her. In the middle of the night, she just started vomiting blood. Come to find out that the diet medication she was taking, because they always program women to think that they're too fat, somehow made her blood vessels weak in her brain, and she had an aneurysm that night. The products they program people to take, because they instill the judgment in them, it takes good people away. But they had the police even over to the house, because my dad was an abusive alcoholic, and they thought he might have hurt her somehow. And by no means am I standing up for my father, because he's no longer with us at all either. But he made up for his alcoholism anyway. I mean, when I had my daughter, I gave him a chance. I gave him another chance to be involved in my daughter's life as a grandfather, and he stopped drinking, and he was a good man. He was a good grandpa. My daughter at least got to know him before he passed. And they had good times together, which I'm grateful for. I'm not grateful for any of the gods they programmed me with. I'm just grateful. I'm grateful to creation that they had the chance to know each other and had the chance to have some fun and be a family together. But that's why it's always important to give people a second chance if they've offended you somehow. We're all programmed to be assholes in one way or another. We're all going to do things that offend people. It's the way we're programmed. It's the way we're programmed to be. But anyway, the police came to the house. I remember I remember that day. I remember that morning they told us Mom had passed away. And they were looking for a suicide note. The police were there looking for some kind of pills that she might have overdosed on or any of that. And they didn't find anything. Dad didn't beat her that week. But he beat her in front of our eyes, plenty of times, but I don't think they were fighting that week. But I remember after my mom passed away, we moved to Florida. And our lives changed. I remember we moved to a town in well, I guess you can consider it Central Florida. We went to go stay with my grandmother turned out to be for years. And I remember my dad kept on drinking, kept on abusing us. And I remember our first day at our new middle school, it was the first time for me and my sister that we ever really spent time with black children our age, because we came from a white, farm town. Then we didn't get to see very many, people around us. And now, me and my sister are going to school in an all-black neighborhood and an all-black middle school. And we didn't think anything of it. We've seen black children before, and we weren't, really taught to be racist. But we quickly found out what racism was, because some of the children that we went to school with in that all-black middle school, they were taught not to like white children too much, obviously, because a lot of times when I walked home from school, I got jumped by several children at the same time, and they were hitting me in the head with sticks and whatnot, they meant business, and I had to quickly learn how to defend myself and fight, you know. I'd take out a couple and they'd all run, you know. It happened a lot to me. It never stopped. Every day it continued. And then finally it escalated to where, you know, I seriously hurt another child, but, you know, I think I stabbed him with a sharp pencil or some shit. It wasn't in any area that was crucial, but I guess they didn't like that too well and took me out of school. Took me out of that school. But we went to that school for a good couple of years. I remember it was on the south side, and I remember as a child going through all that trauma, and then going through the trauma of learning about racism and hatred towards people. I got to the point as a child where I just didn't even want to go to school anymore. There's just too much negativity and too much hatred to deal with. And I didn't really understand it. But I remember me and my sister trying to make the best of it. And don't get me wrong, not everyone was racist in that school. I had some friends that were black, and we got along great. But there's just children there that bought into the programmed racism, and then were taught by their parents to, you know, hate all whites or judge all whites by the psyops they seen in the media, or however it was seen back in the day. But I didn't understand any of that. I was just a child coming from a traumatic situation and being thrown into something I didn't understand. But that's how I learned about racism. That was crazy. But it taught me how to accept everyone, though. I mean, it was a tough thing to go through as a child, but it taught me how to accept people, because what they were doing to me was disgusting, and I knew it. You know? I knew it. And don't get me wrong, I bought into it for a while too. But in the end, it taught me that everyone is the same. You know? Because the black friends I had, I went over to their houses plenty of times, and their mother was the same as any mother would be, and their father was the same as any father would be, you know? I understand a lot of black families, especially in the inner cities, they didn't have the fathers, you know? But I think that was part of the programming as well. It's not like the fathers didn't want to be involved in their child's life. I think they were even programming those people on how they wanted them to be, you know, as far as the lifestyle they wanted them to live. They tell us all how to live our lives, people. They program my father to distract us with the sports. so we can think of ourselves one day as a superstar, maybe, and buying into their American dream when it can only be a dream when you're asleep, like they program us to be. So yeah, don't buy into the national American dream of enslavement. Okay? Well, buy into the enslavement part, but not the dream, the American dream of wealth and fortune. And if you ever do make it to wealth and fortune, you're selling out your brothers and sisters to do it. It's another way they divide us with class warfare. They get you to think you're better than your other brother and sister that doesn't make as much money as you do. The money they enslave you with, okay? Let's not forget, it doesn't matter how rich you are, you're still enslaved. And it's going to be just that much harder for you to even get out of that slavery and think of yourself as a slave because you're too damn comfortable. Too damn comfortable sitting in the AC, too damn comfortable, buying all the material items that you're programmed to love and enjoy. But let me get back on my sister, because the world we're programmed to live in is just too depressing. I remember, even though we had a rough childhood in middle school, we still made the best of it. And I remember me and my sister, we used to like to hang out together a lot and do things. And I remember we used to get grocery carts, and we lived kind of close to downtown, where they had a lot of big shops where older people would go, like older ladies, like the grandmas and their the aunts and the mothers and things, and families would walk up and down the streets and go to the shops. They had a lot more shops and everything, like there'd be a big ass drugstore, and then they'd have Walgreens. And I remember we used to get a grocery cart, maybe one or two, and I'd tell my sister, come on, let's go to the neighbor's house and ask her if we can pick some avocados in her trees. And we used to pick some avocados, make sure they're ripe, and we throw some in the cart, maybe fill it up a quarter full, and then we'd go to some other neighbor's house, ask them if we can pick some oranges, and we'd also pick some mangoes. We'd put them in the cart, and then we'd wheel it in the downtown area, me and my sister, and that's how we used to make our money. We'd sell the fruits to the older ladies, and they'd love us. They'd come by and talk to us. I think me and my sister, we even got in the paper one time, because I remember we got interviewed on the street while we were selling the fruits out of the cart. And we used to do it all the time. We used to make tons of money. The old ladies, I guess they thought we were cute, and we used to take the money and we'd ride the buses, the city buses. We'd ride them everywhere. My dad was an alcoholic back then. He was never around, so me and my twin sister, that's all we had time to do, and we didn't stay home. we'd go do that with the fruits, and then we'd get our money, and we'd ride the city buses, and we'd go all over the city. We'd go to the malls, walk around the malls, and spend the money we made. You know, it was easier being a child, you know, in the middle of your brainwashing. You didn't have any responsibilities until they really enslaved you in the time. I guess well, you don't have to graduate high school to be a slave. You just not have to know how to tell time so you can clock in and out. But yeah, we had good times, we had bad times. I remember a little later in my life, I was still going to that school, but I remember I got a job selling newspapers, and it was a corporate building, and where fancy people came in and out, dressed real fancy in suits and ties, businessmen and businesswomen, mostly businessmen back then, but there were some women. And I remember I used to always sell the newspapers by the elevator that everybody used to go up the main floor. And I got to know a lot of important people, a lot of, you know, people that thought they had great lives in the world they're enslaved in. But I always got good tips. I remember I was selling newspapers as a child, and I remember the day that I had to keep going back and getting newspapers to sell because I kept selling out, and I didn't know why. And that was the day that the Skyway Bridge had gotten hit by a big ship, and all those people had died off the bridge. They fell into the water. They fell into the Gulf of Mexico. And that really happened, guys. That was a real event. It was in Sarasota. And when that big ship hit the Skyway Bridge, and you have to keep in mind, this Skyway Bridge goes from Sarasota, I think it's to Tampa. From Tampa to Sarasota. Or is it from St. Pete? No, it's from St. Pete to Sarasota, okay? It's 14 miles long and goes up in like a pyramid shape, okay? Well, it did anyway. And I remember reading the newspaper, and the headline said, "Ship hits Skyway Bridge," and so many people died. I can't remember the exact number, but they ended up pulling lots and lots of cars out of the Gulf of Mexico, and they pulled out a Greyhound bus. And I remember them showing photos of people's faces that were in like a terrorized pose. And I don't know if it was real or not, but I know something hit that Skyway Bridge, because we went over that Skyway Bridge almost every day, and we couldn't go over it anymore until they rebuilt that the other half. and that took a little time. And they redirected the traffic on the other side of the bridge so people could get over, but that made it horrible because that was only 1 or 2 lanes, I believe, that could go over this big, gigantic, one-sided bridge. It was horrible. It was horrible that those people died. That was horrible. But these are the things that happen in our real lives. And these are the things that we remember growing up. And all of us have our stories. All of us have our experiences that we learn from. But knowing truth, we take a look at it, everything we experienced was through the things they wanted us to experience. You know, with the exception of things happening by accident, like, you know, the tragedy at the Skyway Bridge was probably just an accident, but a lot of people died, a lot of real people died from that accident. And there's things like that that happen in life, you know. Real accidents happen, and real people are programmed to do real disgusting things, you know, such as we're programmed to hate other people and even kill or hurt other people, you know. It's just the way it is. Like they programmed the children that I went to school with, you know, to hate me because of my skin color, so they decided to try to physically hurt me, you know. But that's where the reality comes in, you know. We're programmed by the deception until we make it our reality, you know. But I'll leave it there, guys. My whole point is we have to stop being programmed by what they give us. We lived our whole lives being programmed the way they wanted us to be. Even my father, you know. They program a lot of our fathers and mothers to be alcoholics. And we have to remember it's not their fault. I mean, yeah, their actions they're responsible for. But they're deceived just like we are. I know it doesn't excuse their actions. But it gives us a real place to start to know that they're programmed to be that way, and it's not really who they're meant to be. Just like we all have things we're not proud of, you know. Just like we all have done things that we regret. It's okay. Forgive ourselves and move on. And learn from it and not repeat it. I love you guys. Take care of yourself.